All right, here we are. Good afternoon, guys. It's Erica. I'm back. I feel like I transitioned from a Get More Math trainer to a webinar presenter because that's all we've got these days. So let me go ahead and get started here. Fantastic. All right, as I said, my name is Erica Martin. I am the Director of Training here at Get More Math. I'm watching all of you folks joining in, and I know many of you, so I just want to say hello and thank you for joining me today, where I am here to ask you the question, are you missing the magic? This is a big one. This is an important webinar, so I'm really glad you guys took the time today to attend. The topic is so important that I've brought with me a very special friend, Mr. Josh Britton, the creator of Get More Math. As we both realize that we've got lots and lots of teachers out there that are using Get More Math, loving Get More Math, but they might still be missing the magic. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's our plan for today. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off and continue. All right, so if you are new to the GoToWebinar control panel, I do want to point out that you can go ahead and ask questions at any time throughout the presentation down here, and that we do have two handouts attached to this session. Feel free to download them now or anytime throughout the presentation. Once it's over, you won't be able to access them after that, so you'll want to make sure you download them before the end of the presentation. Okay? And let's go ahead and review the agenda for today. So, where is this magic? What's the magic I'm talking about? That's the first thing that we're going to go ahead and address. And then we're going to talk about the number one biggest mistake, the most important, worst possible mistake teachers could make using Get More Math. Then we're going to talk about 3 simple shifts that you could make to try to avoid making that mistake. Then we're going to go over what I'm going to call the big 3. Those of you that have been using Get More Math for years now know that we provide so much data. And today I'm going to really focus on 3 specific metrics to help you sort of stay in line, stay on track. And then the bonus at the end. Not only are we going to talk about some magic within the practice in the app, but we're also going to talk about exams. We recently just released exams into our web app, so they might be new to some of you, and some of you might have been using them prior in our legacy app. And we're going to talk about some of the most powerful features of exams that, again, could be missed, and we don't want you to do that. So that's the plan for today. Stick around, sit back, enjoy, and let's get started. Where is the magic? And before I tell you where the magic is, we're just going to bring Josh directly in and have a little story time moment. Josh is going to start us out with a story here to kind of lead us into what the magic is that we're talking about. So, Josh, if you want to go ahead and turn on your camera.
Should be on.
Let's see.
Can you see me?
I cannot, but maybe I need to.
I can see me. I mean, on the camera, I think.
Let's see. I might make you the presenter. Maybe that'll allow your face to come up. There. How about that? I can see you now.
Great. Okay. Well, so it's story time. Erica asked me to talk a little bit about an experience I had when I was observing a teacher using Get More Math. It was a fun time for me. I love being in the classroom. It's great to see the teacher working their magic with the instruction, and then seeing the kids log in to our system and making progress through new content. But there came a point during this particular observation where I was like, oh, I don't think this teacher quite, well, even nearly actually experiences the power of Get More Math as it's intended. And where it really came out was this particular moment. It was the first kid who was zooming along through the new content finished, right? So there were like maybe 2 skills on the screen that the kid had to do, maybe 4 of each. And he was just like, bam, 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 and he finished. His screen changed over to mixed review. There were all these colored squares. He raises his hand, and without waiting to be called on, because this was like a 6th grade class and it's a little unruly, he raises his hand and says, I'm done. And they proceeded to say something like, what should I do now? So there was this screen of mixed review sitting in front of him. And his response to finishing the new content was to say, I'm done, I don't have anything to do now. And as I looked at the colors of all of his squares, they were all red and yellow. So that was a very telling moment for me. It was interesting because this is a teacher who invited me in, a teacher who really likes Get More Math, was experiencing the power of delivering those practice sets, the focus practice, the power of kids actually having to learn to get the problems right. But I would say she was a teacher who was at that point somewhat missing the magic. I think that's my story, Erica.
You got it. And Josh, it was my mistake. They could all see you. It was me that I couldn't see you. So,
Well, but anyway, by the way, I love this slide, the true story slide. It made me happy.
it was a true story, and you can see that my little face isn't so happy about that true story. I remember when Josh came back from that trip and told me that, and I thought, oh, how do I make sure that as teachers utilize our app, they're not missing the magic? That teacher obviously was. And so I'm going to go back, and you guys are going to say, no, Erica, don't show me these pie charts again. And I'm just going to briefly zip through that. That teacher was providing a lesson. She was providing practice on the lesson. In fact, she was using Get More Math to do that. And we all know that if that is what we repeat throughout a unit, and then those are the units that we repeat throughout a year, it doesn't work. We've all done this. We've done the teach, practice, teach, practice, teach, practice. The kids forget the math. We know that we're simply just cramming material for a test. They sigh when they're done and they move on to the next concept. And we know that that brings along this faded, hazy remembering until you get to the very end of the year where it's just gone. It's clear. You never taught me that, Mrs. Martin. And so now it's like, wait, I can't cram for the big test. I have too much. I have to try to reteach all this material. We've all talked about this. We know that this doesn't work. This needs improvement. This is what Josh knew needed improvement. And what was the improvement? The improvement was the mixed review. We know that if we don't reach back, that it's simply just short-term mastery. It's never long-term mastery. And that's what Get More Math does better than anybody else. The mixed review is what builds the long-term retention because it's cumulative, because it's individualized. However, Get More Math doesn't just provide us with mixed review. We also provide this individualized focus practice, which we call a practice set. And so we've got these two pieces. And so I'm going to ask you, where is the magic? Between these two pieces, where's the power? You know, it was interesting as I was preparing this webinar, I kept saying they're missing the magic. And then the more I built it, the more I played with it, I thought, you know what? It's not just magical. Any teacher that's used us knows you don't just stick a kid on a computer and poof, some smoke goes up in the air and they're all just geniuses and remember everything. No, it's still hard work. But where's the power? Where is the power that has the potential for magical results? It's not here, folks. This is valuable practice, yes, but it's not enough. If you're only using us for the purple practice set, you are missing the magic. The magic is in the mixed review. It's cumulative. That's the piece that's reaching back, not the practice set. It's individualized. This is where we're taking the entire collection and deciding specifically which skill each kiddo needs to work on. And that is what builds the true retention over time, not the practice set. The practice set, yes, I'm not telling you to never use them, but that's going to show short-term understanding. The mixed review is what shows the long-term understanding. There's much more value there. So I'm going to kind of reference this purple idea of a purple practice set and green mixed review, and I want you to start shifting your thinking into this mixed review piece, okay? That's the magic. Where is it? It's in the mixed review. So what's the number one biggest mistake that we often see with our teachers? Well, they hear this from us, they nod their heads, yes, Erica, you're right, this is why my kids are forgetting, I want to do this. They get into Get More Math, they set up their classes, they set up these practice sessions, they want to do this, and they end up doing this. They still spend a portion of their day on the lesson, they still spend a large portion of their day in that practice set, and what's the thing that gets cut? The mixed review. Well, guys, that's the most important piece. We can't let that be the last resort. Well, we'll get to it if we have time. It can't be that way. It has to be our primary focus. So let's take a deeper look at the difference between that practice set and the mixed review, just to reinforce why that mixed review is so very powerful. Here we are, we're looking at Freddie Johnson. He's in a practice set. He's looking at only 3 skills. These are the skills that I taught today. Every student will be looking at those 3 skills. So it's very focused and it's not nearly as individualized, because whether Freddie's great at it or not, he's going to be looking at the slope. Now, look at the mixed review. This is a cumulative collection of every skill I've taught so far this year. Don't worry, because the 3 skills from the practice set are in the mixed review. So some of those teachers that are really hesitant to move away from that focused practice, we try to remind them the skills from the focused practice are included in the mixed review. And if your students still need them, if they still need additional practice, Get More Math will make that decision for you and place $signs there. You don't need to worry. Just a reminder, these color ratings, you're able to see for every skill your student has worked on, what is their proficiency level? Is it the lowest rating, red, maybe yellow, green, silver, or gold? These color ratings, folks, this is actually what is showing you, has your student demonstrated mastery over time? Demonstrating mastery over time versus the practice set, which is simply, I taught you the material today. Were you able to do it today? This is telling me, are you able to do it over time? This matters more. Now, it's funny. As I was preparing this presentation, I don't know how many of you have worked with Robbie Brown, one of our trainers. He said, you know, Erica, I get these emails or these chats or sometimes phone calls from our teachers, and they'll say things to me like, you know, I really wish that I could go into my students' data and analyze it and figure out what it is my kids are still weak on and give them like a focused assignment, you know, just handcrafted for them. I wish I could do that. Guess what, folks? You don't have to do that. That's what this is. This is a handcrafted assignment just for Freddie based on what he needs. Now I want to pause here because some of you might say, well, Erica, I've been using this long enough. If it's what he needs, shouldn't these all be read? They can't all be read, guys. If we're only ever working on our weaknesses and we're never revisiting the skills that we made some gains on, we'll lose them. It's about retaining the gains we made as much as it is about making new gains. And that's what Get More Math does so well, by placing the $signs on what Freddie needs most. So when those teachers ask Robbie that, Robbie says, no, you're missing the magic. The magic is that mixed review is doing exactly that for you. You don't have to analyze the data. You don't have to craft the assignment. Put them in mixed review, okay? All right, number 1 biggest mistake, not prioritizing mixed review practice enough. So let's move into 3 simple shifts that we can look at in order to kind of move in that direction. Now take a look at these 2 columns. One says, okay, and we put that there because it's not bad. It's not, we're not saying, oh, you're a terrible teacher and you're doing an awful job if you're using practice sets. That's not the case. It's okay. But really, there's something you could be doing that's much more powerful to sort of break into that magic. So let's start here. It's okay to ask, did my students complete the practice set? But what's better is to ask, did my students earn enough points in mixed review? Because completing the practice set, short term, earning points and having quality practice in mixed review, that's what's building the long-term retention. What's the second one? Okay, I'm a teacher, and maybe I'm only setting and checking a practice set goal. That's all I'm concerned with. I made a practice set. Now I want to know, did they finish it? What's even better is, could you set a daily goal that includes those practice set points, but also includes mixed review points? Or maybe you want to set a weekly goal that includes not just the practice set, but also mixed review. That teacher that Josh was referring to, she was doing the things in the okay column. The kids finished the practice set. They had finished the practice set goal. That's all she was checking. We've got to get past that. And the last one is really, this is more of a thought. Teachers often think that if a student simply completes the practice set, that it implies that they've mastered that skill. Well, listen, once we further that discussion, I don't think any math teacher would agree that just because I taught you something today and you completed the practice set on it today, that you are a master on it forever. That is not the case. So what is the case? The colors. Green or better, green, silver, or gold. You actually can believe that that implies skill mastery, because when a student earns green, silver, or gold, they are demonstrating over and over across time that they understand that skill because they're answering it correctly on the first try. That is what's actually implying skill mastery. So the question becomes, are you setting the right goals for the practice in the right mode so that you're actually looking and giving the kids the opportunities to sort of make those color progressions and really earn that long-term retention for the skills? All right, let's flip over to the teacher app just for a second. I want to show you those two things. Let's see. Okay, I want to show you here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my goal. And I'm going to head over to my work, and I'm going to ask myself, okay, so maybe I'm about to give my 7th graders an assignment. So I'm going to head into Unit 1, and I'm going to choose this assignment here. You can see I have 2 skills, 3 points per skill. That's a good practice set. It's short, it's focused. I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Now, what is my practice set goal? It's 6. I'm going to start that for my first period class. And I'm going to head over to my classes page, and I'm going to see that they are in fact working on that practice set. Now, I don't want those kids to do what the student did that was in front of Josh. I don't want them to get to 6 and say, oh, I'm done. Now I see all the squares. I want to be done. No, I'm going to head over here to set the daily goal. And if they were going to earn 6 in the practice set, I'm going to ask myself, how many points do I want them to earn in mixed review? How many questions do I want them to get right on the first try? Well, that really depends on the class. It depends on the level of kids. I would say start with something they can achieve, monitor how they do with that, and over time, if you think you need to increase or decrease that goal, you do that. I'm going to say for my given kids, I want 10 further points in mixed review. I know they did 6 in the practice set, so I'm going to make today's total goal 16. So now those students see something on their screen. Even once they get past the practice set goal of 6, they get to mixed review and it says you still have 10 points remaining. That's what's going to ensure that my students are earning points and practicing in the mixed review in addition to the practice set. While I'm here, I'm just going to give a shout out to this button, switch to mixed review. There's a reason we put it here right under the goal. Never hesitate to move students directly to mixed review, because even if they didn't finish the practice set, remember those practice set skills will be included in the mixed review as well. All right, let's head back over here. All right, 3 simple shifts. We went through them. Now let's head into some mixed review metrics, the big 3. Lots of things happening here. In fact, there could be even more depending on which columns you have opened up in your screen. But today, I just want to simply focus on the points distribution, rotation time, and proficient students, okay? So let's look at points distribution to start. Here's what I love about this. Pie charts, colors, very easy for me to quickly look at a picture and know if I'm on the right track. So you can see here, we're saying this pie chart is great. Why is that? Well, the green, it's kind of aqua maybe, the greenish portion of the pie is showing us how many points of the total points earned in this class were earned in mixed review, whereas the purple is showing us the practice set. So let's look at what we think is good. 50-50 is fine. If half of your practice is in mixed review and half is in a practice set, we think that's good. If even more of your time or more of the points earned is in mixed review, we think that's even better. This is the one we're concerned with. When there's too much purple, what that's telling me is this is likely to be a teacher that provides a lesson, provides a practice set, the students spend the majority of their time there, and then maybe they do some practice in mixed review from time to time. This is the pie we do not want to see, okay? Take a look at rotation time. First, let's define it. What it means is it's actually the median. I think we have a bunch of math teachers on the call here, so we should know that we're talking about the middle number here. The median number of days it takes for our students to correctly cycle through all active skills in mixed review. So in short, okay, it takes Susie 26 days to get through all the skills before she goes back and starts repeating them. Well, remember, first of all, it's a median. So if we're reporting 39 as we are here, you can say that half your kids are doing it quicker than 39 days, but half of your students are taking more than 39 days. So I think it's important that you keep in mind that we're talking about a median. But I also just want you to ask yourself, if Get More Math is really used for review, if your students are cycling through everything about once a month, do you think that's enough to kind of keep it in their mind? I think so. That's why we're saying anything within 30 days is good or great. Anything more than 30 days, probably want to start to think about it. I'll tell you, some teachers will log in here and it'll say 140 days. Those are definitely the rotation times that we say, okay, there's a problem. We either need more time in mixed review, or sometimes the other culprit is just too many skills. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the third one. Proficient students. This one is my favorite. I know you're not supposed to have favorite students or favorite metrics, but I do. This one's my favorite, and here's why. Anytime we use the word proficient in Get More Math, we're talking about green or better, green, silver, or gold. And what I loved about green, silver, and gold when I was in my classroom was I knew what it meant. I knew that if a kid earned silver, they were answering that question correctly over time, and that was the thing I wanted. Okay, so proficiency for me, it was like the gold standard of what I really wanted to have happen for my kiddos, was really demonstrating that long-term retention. Now let's take a look at it. We'll pull out two skills here. This skill says solve using factoring, and it says 87%. So let me explain what that means. It means 87% of the students in my class have reached green, silver, or gold on this skill. That's what I want to have happen. That means it's been in the mixed review long enough for my students to cycle through. They've been able to practice, and they're showing me they still know how to do it over time. That's what you want to see. However, this is not what I want to see. Proofs involving quadrilaterals. 4% of my students have reached green, silver, or gold. Well, it's not shocking to me. I can tell you my students do not love proofs. But it is concerning because if 96, that's essentially my entire class, is still sitting at red or yellow, what does that mean? Well, it could mean two things. Maybe they really just don't understand it. Maybe I need to revisit it and reteach it. Or maybe they just have not had enough time to cycle back to that skill often enough. Maybe it's too new. I don't know, those are questions you need to ask, but understanding the data and understanding where you want it to be is half the battle, okay? So let's take a look. I'm gonna give you 3 different teachers, and these are real teacher snapshots, and I wanna ask, did they miss the magic? So let's start with our big 3. Points distribution, I like it. There's more green than purple. Rotation time, 92 days. If it's taking my students 3 months to cycle through the skills, I'm going to say that I need to make an adjustment. And I will tell you, I'm seeing lots of skills down here that are 0% for proficient. Now be mindful, if it's a newly added skill, that's okay. The students haven't had time to reach it. So be mindful when you're looking at proficient, that you're not looking at skills that are, too entirely new. I can tell you right now, I know we didn't really point out the active skills, but that's probably the culprit for this teacher. 161 skills, that would take a long time for students to go through 161 skills. So it seems to me like this particular teacher needs to do some pruning and needs to deactivate some skills so the kiddos can actually cycle through on a more regular basis. Let's take a look at teacher number 2. How's that pie chart looking? No, too much purple. That's a clear sign of teaching a lesson, giving a practice set, teaching a lesson, giving a practice set. We want more time in mixed review. Rotation days a little better, but 80s still, in my opinion, way too many. And we've got just no proficient, none at all. That's a concern, and probably too many skills. I'm going to say this teacher has missed the magic. And then we'll end with a good one. We see lots of green here, a manageable number of skills with 45. I'm even going to give the 39 days a green smiley, specifically when we're talking about nowadays where we understand your students aren't in the room with you. And even down here, do all of these say 100% proficient? Probably not, but at least they're increasing. At least my kids are moving in the right direction. Okay. Quick review. What are the big 3? Points distribution. You want more green than purple in that pie chart. Rotation time. Your kiddos have to cycle through on a somewhat regular basis or it's not going to work. And last one is proficiency, green or better. That's the true measure of whether this is working. So take a look at that proficiency. All right, we are just zipping through and we've got to my favorite part of the presentation. For those of you that have maybe had trainings with me in person, you know I love the exams and Get More Math. The mixed review changed my classroom, but the exams changed the way I assessed my kids. Huge, huge game changer for me. So where is this magic in the exams? Well, I'm going to tell you, I think we have 4 powerful little nuggets hidden within our exams. The first one is the fact that it's so simple to make cumulative exams as opposed to just chapter tests, unit tests, weekly quizzes. Can you do that? Sure. Do I think you're missing the magic if you're not utilizing cumulative exams? I do. Corrections. Wait till you see what our corrections mode looks like and how it works. And I'm going to tell you specifically how it made fundamental changes in the way my kids practiced and took tests in my classroom. The third one is our follow-up exams. And the last one is the item analysis that we offer. So before I get started with these, we're going to bring Mr. Storyteller back himself. And Josh, go ahead and give us your last story.
I'm trying, just a second here. Let's see here. I can still see your slides. Can you see me, Erica?
I'm afraid to answer because last time I was wrong.
Everything looks good. We can see and hear you, Josh.
Excellent. Thank you, Robbie. Well, hello again. Let me start by saying I so wish that all of us were in the same room. First of all, I just love hanging out with teachers, and it's just great to share stories and grow together. But secondly, I don't exactly know how to tell my story because I have totally radical conclusions. And I'm tempted to just say, here's my radical position on exams. But I think because I can't see you and I'm afraid of scaring you off, I'll start with the less radical beginnings. So when I started giving exams as a math teacher in 1990, I did what I'm going to call it, this sounds kind of ugly, but had been done to me as a math student in middle school and in high school. You study a unit, you study for the test, you take the test. All right, repeat process. Study for unit, study for the test, take the test. And you just keep doing that every couple of weeks, right? You take unit tests. So as a new teacher, I did the same thing with my students, and it seemed to work okay. I had kids passing tests, but it didn't take me very long to realize that those tests sort of purported to say something about the students and about their mathematical gains that actually in reality was wildly inaccurate. I kind of had the notion that test grades show if the kids learn the math, and it turned out that just wasn't true. Long term, a lot of my kids, especially those first years, hadn't learned the math, and I found that out, say, when the kids went to the next year and the following teacher had to spend 6 weeks reviewing stuff that my students were supposed to already know. So I became unsatisfied with unit tests. I realized that they were to some degree simply a reflection of how well I and my students had crammed stuff into kids' heads for a temporary exercise. So it wasn't maybe something exactly to put on your refrigerator like I used to encourage my kids to do, because while it showed, an achievement, it didn't actually measure the kind of achievement I wanted, which was the kids actually learning long-term the mathematical content in my classes, pre-algebra, algebra, typically. So if the goal is the test show what kids know about your topic, I came to believe that the best tests were cumulative. That's the first piece, and that's probably the easiest piece to put in your head. Let's give a test that covers all the material we've studied in some way. So instead of having like 10 questions about unit 1 and maybe 1 or 2 questions from, unit 1 is the first unit, 10 questions from unit 5, and maybe a question from unit 1 and a question from unit 2. When my students were doing what we might call unit 5, and then when they would take a test, most of the questions would be about concepts from unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4, and a few questions from unit 5. So I wasn't testing like, have we temporarily shoved stuff in their heads? I was testing like, have they learned the body of the course up to this point in time? Now, of course, that was a brutal exercise. As a teacher, I had to spend, just hundreds and hundreds of hours making exams, and then making practice exams for kids with IEPs that needed practice materials, and making answer keys. And I don't know, I'd have you all raise your hand if you'd ever made a mistake on the answer key, like because you were making it at midnight on a Saturday night, and then you distribute it to parents, and they go, "Is this key's wrong?" And all those, it was hard. And then in later years, we would change our curriculum, so I couldn't just take out the ones I'd made from the prior year. I'd have to make more cumulative exams. So that was really incredibly challenging. But it became a deep-seated conviction of mine that cumulative testing is the only testing that yields what I wanted, which is true indicators of student mastery of the course. And then Erica said 3 to 5 minutes, and I haven't been paying attention, so I'm probably already.
You're good, Josh. Talking.
Right,
Yep.
Okay. So I said at the beginning, though, I have ended up with kind of radical understanding of testing. Certainly cumulative testing is part of it, but probably even more radical, more striking to people who haven't done it is I've come to believe that, how do I say this right? I don't want my students to study for my tests. In fact, I don't even want them to think about or worry about the tests. What I want when I give a cumulative test is I want the kids to just walk into my room and take it. I want the test to show what they know, not what they've kind of like re-upped or shoved back in their heads, but actually their genuine long-term gains. So not only did I, over the years, transform into a cumulative testing pattern, but also I stopped ever having any study sessions, any cramming days, anything like that. A test day, they just come in and take the test. Now, of course, because I had that other magic we just talked about, all the mixed review, so kids were constantly cycling through all the core content. And then I built my cumulative tests off the body of material that was in the mixed review. So the kids weren't shoving the stuff in their heads on the study day. but on a regular basis, Get More Math was making sure they were addressing their weaknesses and cycling through. And like that rotation cycle you were looking at, my days were probably like 15 days. So every couple of weeks, kids were cycling through every core content, everything that I cared about. So then when I gave a test, they were familiar with the material and they were fine. But anyway, the idea of not studying for tests, that actually studying, which often ends up being more towards cramming, actually sort of skews the data and makes the test results be a less comprehensive measure of whether the kids have really mastered the whole body of the content. So like I'll give you a simple example. When my kids would walk in halfway through the school year and take a test, they would take no studying for it, and they would have a test that covered everything we'd ever learned, and they would do fine because the testing was reflecting the fact that they had really learned the math and they were retaining it. That's probably enough, huh, Erica? I'm well past my time. Thank you for giving me a chance to tell stories, and since this is my last story, let me just say again that I wish we could be in person, and I wish you all well.
Thanks, Josh. You could tell that story to me every morning because it's like inspiring and I believe it because I did it. And I'm just going to tack on one more little story to your story. And it's the fact that I feel like so often we teach in chapters and we test in chapters. And once, maybe twice a year, if we give a midterm, we say to our kids, oh, by the way, now you have a test that's going to cover 6 chapters. Let's study, good luck. And we've all seen the anxiety this produces in our students. It's terrible, especially for those younger grades. Because again, we don't prepare them for cumulative tests until they get to the big one that matters. Well, when you build that from the beginning in the way you just described, we are actually preparing our kids for the size of test in addition to just knowing the material, which I also really appreciated. So thank you so much for that story. Well done. So let's go ahead, let's head back here. Josh just said a lot about the cumulative feature. I'm gonna say a little bit more. I remember back when I was in the classroom, I remember talking to Josh on the phone about these tests and him explaining essentially what he just did to me, but maybe a little bit more specifically. He would say, Erica, when I give a test, I'm not going to include any of the skills. Think about those blue lesson days. So whatever I was teaching in the blue, he would say, I'm not going to include those skills. The kids don't know it yet. They're still practicing. They're still building that long-term understanding. Not going to include that. But I am going to include everything else. I said, okay. So I did that for my first exam. Then you get to the second one. Now, whether you're still teaching in units or teaching in chapters, but you get to the point where you're like, okay, I need to give a second exam. And I'd say, all right, I'm not going to include that new stuff. It's too fresh. But now what's funny is, I'm going to get to Josh's version here in a second. My thought, because again, this was a shift for me, was, well, wait a second. Nothing from these 2 weeks has been assessed. I want to make sure I include every single one of those skills on my test. So I would. But I would go back to that first week that had already been assessed, and I would include as much of that as I could, depending on the size of the test. And that would be my second exam. Then I get to my third exam. Can you see how the little orange bubble is getting a little bit bigger each time? I'd avoid this material. I made sure that I included all of that because I wanted to know if they knew it. But then I'd go back to those first 3 weeks and I'd pick as much as I could and I'd include that as well. And the funny part was I had these kids, low-level math students, and I saw them. They would take these tests. There was no stress. There was no anxiety because each test just included a little bit more than the last one. And that's what I did throughout the year. Now, Josh's is almost even easier. Here's Josh midway. He didn't include this. And then he'd look back through the mixed review of all of those other weeks, and he would say, okay, I'm going to pick and choose what I want. And that was his test. Either way you slice it, if you do something like this and you get to the end of the year and you have the big, scary test, guess what? It's not that much bigger than the one they just took because it's just the last test of the year. It really takes away that fearful. Oh my goodness, I suddenly have to prepare for a thing that I haven't had to prepare for all year. When you're using cumulative exams with mixed review, they're taking them all year long. It's like a final every single time. And it really makes a difference for your kiddos. Now, I wanted to give you a sneak peek because I'm actually going to go with the method Josh used here. He would head to his classes, choose his mixed review report, and he would order by date active and active skills. And he'd say, okay, I'm not going to include these ones. They're the ones I just did in the last 3 days, so they're out. But he'd select whatever he wanted down the list. And maybe he pulls up data on the right here to inform his decisions. But he selects the skills he wants, head to the actions box, click create exam, and you're done. That's when like mind blown for me because building them would be so difficult. But when you've already provided the mixed review to your kids, Get More Math really makes it so very simple. Okay, cumulative. That's my pitch for not just using the exams, but really considering making them cumulative throughout the year. Now let's talk about corrections. Here we've got a student. This is Timmy Zelch. Timmy's in mixed review. A few days ago, he took a test with me. And on the test, he missed 5 questions. So when I decided as the teacher that I want Timmy to do corrections on his test, what will happen is his mixed review screen will change. And instead of prioritizing his practice in the mixed review collection, it looks like this. So what just changed? You can see the mixed review skills are still there. We've got a dotted line. We've got 5 colored squares up top. These are, in fact, the test questions that Timmy missed, okay? So we're gonna put those missed questions up top, and we're gonna require 2 things to happen. First, Get More Math is gonna ask Timmy to correct each mistake. Second thing, once the mistake is corrected, we're gonna give him a fresh, new version of that problem, and we're gonna ask him to earn a point. So let's figure out the misunderstanding. Let's figure out the error and fix it. Now show me you can do it correctly on your own on the first try. Once those 2 things happen, then Get More Math will move the $ both above the dotted line and below the dotted line so that Timmy can continue to practice in a cumulative fashion, but he can also focus on those errors. Now, what effect does this have on your students? Let me tell you, this made such a difference for my kids. I'm going to tell you a little story here. I too taught algebra, and I can tell you that domain and range was truly something that my kids almost didn't even understand until they got to pre-calculus with me. It was such a struggle. So when I used to teach prior to Get More Math, they would get to the chapter with domain and range, they would just struggle through it, get to the chapter test, they'd probably miss every question on domain and range, I'd give the test back, they would have a sigh of relief because guess what? They didn't have to think about domain and range until maybe the end of the year when it showed up on the final. It was just that, oh, it's done. Now let me move on to something else. Not with Get More Math. If I gave you a test and it included domain and range and you truly didn't understand the material, not only could you have a sigh of relief because you'd never see it again, you were going to see it in your corrections where I was going to make you fix it and practice it. And then after a few days, I would ask my students to access their follow-up exam. So here's Timmy, he goes to his menu, he requests a test, and sitting there waiting for him is a follow-up exam based on the 5 skills he missed on his original test. So I can't just take the test and then run from it. Now I have to correct it. I have to continue to practice it. Now I'm going to be retested on it. Wait a second. So you mean I can't just rush through material I don't like? That was huge for my students. Now, I loved the analysis of both of those 2 things. I would take a look at my class and I would see their exam scores and the grade that they got, but better yet, I would see their follow-up score. So let's look at Timmy again. Here's Timmy, he got an 80% on his test. I don't know about you, but most of my students would be thrilled with an 80 and they would move on, not caring at all about addressing those 5 errors. But look at Timmy's follow-up score. So for me, about a week later, after some practice and remediation that Get More Math did for me, he gets a 3.5 out of 5. Why? because he just didn't forget about the skills. He was forced to revisit them. That was huge for me. Okay, gets even better. This is where Erica gets really excited. Look at this view analysis in the top. You click on this view analysis and it would give me an item analysis of every test I gave. So on the left, you'd have the list of all the skills you included. And on the right, you'll see I have a column entitled Students Missed, so I can see how many students missed each skill, or I can look at it by the number of points. Either way, I would come over here every single exam and I would select the top 4 or 5 skills that were most missed on my test. Once I selected them, I would click Create Practice Set, which would head over to my work page, and I would name it Most Missed Questions on Exam whatever. Let's use exam 1 here just for an example. I would hit save, and this is the tricky part, I never started it. I never gave it to my kids. I didn't need to. I knew that Get More Math, through the corrections and through the follow-up, they were going to address the weaknesses directly with the kids. That's not why I made this practice set. Here's why I made it. Because, let's say 10 days later, it's time for me to make my second exam. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull all those skills in, which I showed you how to do it one way from the mixed review, which eventually sends you over here. But check this out. Do you see what's hanging out on the right side of my screen in my work? There's that practice set, and it's holding the skills that were most missed on exam 1. And as I'm building my cumulative exam 2, guess where I'm gonna put them? That's right. So for my kids, that concept, domain and range, showed up on the test, showed up in their corrections, showed up in their follow-up, continued to show up in their mixed review, and then it showed up on the next exam. Because the idea was, guess what, guys? This skill matters to me, and it's not going to be a once and done. We're going to continue to revisit it. So when they get to March, do you think they're getting a better grasp of domain and range because it wasn't taught in one chapter and then dropped? You better believe it. This was huge. There's a lot of magic in exams, folks. I'm telling you, it's a powerful, powerful tool if you understand all the different features and really try to utilize them. So thanks for sticking around through that piece. So I want you to ask yourself, did you miss the magic? Have you missed maybe pieces of the magic? It's okay if you did. Everyone, it happens to all of us, but guess what? It's not too late. It's not too late to look at your own metrics and say, do I need to reflect on my practices? Do I need to consider some of those small shifts? What am I worried about? Am I worried about practice set completion, or am I really worried about points earned in mixed review? I'll tell you, I would encourage any of you that are thinking, you know what, I need to look at this a little deeper. Please attend one of our level 3 trainings, where most of the time it's run by Pam Long. Some of you even know her or have trained with her. She does a really deep dive into that mixed review data that we talked about today, plus much more. It's really eye-opening into sort of what your students are doing and where you can make improvements. I also want everyone to know that starting in June, we will be offering a level 4 training that will solely cover exams and all of those different features, how to create it, the different reports, much more detail than I gave you today. So please go ahead and check that out. And then my final offer is, listen, if you're sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, I hear what she's saying, I want to do better, I'm overwhelmed, I don't have enough time, I need help, what do I do? Please reach out to us. We would love nothing more than setting up a one-on-one conference with any of you where we can screen share, we can look at your, open up your app, we can look at your classes, look at your practice sets, give you specific tips based on your situation, because if that's one thing I've learned over the last few years is that every school is set up a little bit differently. You all have different requirements, and we're here to help in any way we can. So that is the end. Thank you so much. I hope that you don't miss the magic. I will take this moment to first ask Robbie if there are any specific questions that you'd like me to address. Yeah?
Can I cut in on you?
And then I was going to pass it to Josh. So sure, you can cut it first.
Well, I just had this thought. I'm looking through the names of all the folks here today, and I definitely recognize a bunch of you from various conversations and interactions, and that's really fun. I have this thought, like if this is a topic, well, this meaning really we had two major topics, right? Mixed review and cumulative exams. If either of those topics are something you have more to add, some experience you've had, something you think would add value to the group, it'd be cool to have like a little bit of a rolling notion to this conversation, especially since a lot of you are veteran users and maybe you could add value for folks that aren't. And one of the things I most liked about delivering Get More Math to everyone is it's like a tool. And as I put it in other people's hands, they've used it in different ways that are really fascinating and powerful. So it's not like you have to use it, exactly a certain way. Anyway, this thought: if you're a Facebook user and you'd like to join our Facebook, user group, teacher group, we would love to have you, and just post something. Say, hey, I was at this webinar and I wanted to throw in this further thought. That could be a lot of fun if you have time and inclination.
Excellent. Okay, so Robbie, I know you're still on here.
Yeah, we had a couple questions that were specifically going to be answered from the mixed review menu. So the first one, which was really simple, was just how do I deactivate skills? So I don't know if you could just answer that question really quickly and show that.
Sure, you can still see my screen, right?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, yep, so from the mixed review menu, and again, that's where that level 3 training is going to be vital. Pam will actually go through all the different ways to make smart decisions about which ones to activate and deactivate, but I can just show you quickly. It's just this little slider. It's just that simple. If my mouse wants to cooperate. I'm getting a little bit of lag time here, but this is what you do. You slide that guy over, and I can't even blame it on my son playing Xbox. Can you see that, Robbie? There we go.
Yeah, it's working. It just has a little lag.
Yeah, there's some lag. Okay, any other questions while we wait for that to kind of load?
Well, the other question also on that screen is about how you decide which skills to include in your cumulative testing. So I know that's going to be different from teacher to teacher, but maybe if you could just say that part again, how you kind of sort by date added and stuff like that.
Sure, absolutely. So there's a couple schools of thought there, but for sure I would sort by date added. I'm a little bit afraid to do it and have it load on me, but I would sort by date added. And again, I would try to avoid those really new skills that they haven't had time to master yet. And then you're just going to kind of scroll down from there. And my thing would be this. Here's an example. Here's scientific notation with big numbers and small numbers, and maybe I'm adding. So oftentimes where I saw maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 skills that all had to do with the same topic, I didn't need to include all 7 of them. I might choose 2 of them, and then I would go down into the next topic. Specifically because they are ordered by the date you add them, I was adding them as I taught them, so they would be linked or grouped rather by topic. So I would kind of pick and choose, okay, I want a couple in terms of adding integers, and then maybe 2 or 3 with scientific notation, and then 4 with exponent rules. And then once I hit the create exam from here, it would take me over to the work page, and it will show the exam that you're creating on the left, and you can add additional skills. You're not done yet. And so that's where on the right side, you can access your own work. So you could pull skills from previous tests, you could pull skills from previous practice sets, and that's where you can even pull skills from that special practice set that I made. And that's by simply clicking on collections and accessing your own work. So if you click my work, it will actually load all of your own practice sets that you've built, well, anything that you've built, exams also here, so that then you can move it over into the exam you've made. Is that okay, Robbie?
That sounds good. And I think, let me check on this one that just came in. The only other questions that I got were all pretty specific one-off that I was able to answer for those teachers. So those were the big ones that kind of kept being repeated.
Fantastic. And while I have this open, let me see if I can't load the webpage just to show everybody how to access those 3 levels of training. And my internet is really not cooperating here. So from the webpage, if you hover over resources, you will see the option for free training. And if you click on the free training, right now you will see levels 1, 2, and 3. Level 3 is that data analysis that I was speaking of. When you head back here in June, you will see an option for level 4 that will go into all of those. We'll go into further depth on exams and creating them. So that's how you access those resources, free training. Okay, anything else, Robbie, before I wrap up?
Yeah, one more question that came in, which was pretty good. Has to do with skills that have been deactivated. So if you're providing cumulative tests, do you go back and include skills that you've deactivated? So maybe you can just talk, I know that gets into pruning and that's its own thing, but maybe you can kind of answer that question.
Yeah, again, it's interesting when Josh said earlier, there is no hard fast rule, like you should never do that. I'm sure that there might be an instance where a teacher says, well, you know, I deactivated this skill and now I have a reason to include it on a test. So I'm not going to say never, but I will say that it makes sense to me that if I deactivate a skill and my students haven't been practicing it for the last 3-4 months, suddenly including it on an exam might be a little tricky. So I think I would personally stick with the skills that I have activated. Now, that said, if I went into my mixed review and I decided it was time to deactivate some skills and activate some new skills, or maybe reactivate some old skills, maybe after I gave that a week or 2 or 3, then I'd feel comfortable to go ahead and include that in an exam. But that it's truly up to the teacher. There's no rule that says you can't.
I think that's pretty much it then for questions.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that was fun. Thank you for joining me. I really, really hope that made a difference and you guys kind of see the power, again, the power in the mixed review and the power in the cumulative exam. So we're here to help. Thanks for all that you do for your students. And I hope you guys have a great day. See you later.